In any case, thank you. Welcome. We're so glad to have you join us today. My name is Jennifer Ray, Program Manager at Aparo, and I look after things like these webinars, educational type of events, and trainings, and our award programs like GAIN and Mission Possible. One of the things that I look after is finding volunteers who are willing to join us on sessions like today's session. And we are so fortunate to welcome our speaker today, Laura Rebel from Rebel Creative. And in just a moment, I'll just turn the mic over to her and let her introduce herself and tell you a little bit more about what she does in her day-to-day life. But a couple of pieces of business before we get underway. Number one is, I hope everyone who registered got our message that we sent out a couple of weeks ago. We had transposed title and verbiage for today's session, so I want to make sure everybody is on the same page for what we're doing today. Rather than Google Analytics, we are doing Google Ad Grants today. I am going to host the Google Analytics session, but that's probably not going to happen until May. So today's focus is on Google Ad Grants, words. So note to self, if you'd like to participate in Google Analytics, be on the lookout. We'll start pushing out messages about that, excuse me, as soon as I secure the date and speaker. Second thing I'd like to share with you very quickly, Aparo, as you may be aware of, is engaged in an award program called Mission Possible. And we've shifted our timeline on that award program this year. Generally, we do it in the fall. This year, we're doing it beginning this month in January. Yay, COVID continues to impact when we do things and sort of how we do them. But anyway, the takeaway for right at the moment is we are approaching the deadline to apply for the Mission Possible Award program. January 19th is the deadline. Now, I'm going to include this slide in our follow-up materials after we leave our session today, so that if you want to delve into these details that I have on the slide, you know, well, what do you mean it's a $60,000 award? Well, what do I have to do? All of that information you can glean from our webpage, which is listed right here at the bottom of the slide. And naturally, we're available if you'd like to ask us questions and understand a little bit more about this. But the bottom line is the Mission Possible Award Program is based on trying to move the needle on economic mobility. We ask nonprofit proposals to come in that are based on technology, and then Accenture helps nonprofits come in and craft a proposal that is then submitted competitively and judged by a group of volunteer CIOs here in the community, and they choose the winning award. So that's a high-level look at it. If you'd like more detail, as I say, please visit our website or feel free to reach out to me or anybody else in the company, and we'll be happy to work with you. So I've taken enough time with that subject. Let's get back to the topic at hand, which is Google Ad Grants. And as I said, so excited to welcome Laura Rebel. Thank you so much. Just so you guys know out there in the community, Laura looks after Aparo's website. We have connected her with many community nonprofits who have either needed some pro bono assistance through our IT coaching or paid engagements. We've had nonprofits who have gone on to do other projects with Laura after they've come through our service channels. So she's got lots of experience and she knows our nonprofit community well. With that, let me back up and go quiet and turn everything over to Laura. Welcome.
Hey there. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And Jennifer, are you going to display the slideshow or will you make me presenter so I can share? Oh, I can share my screen. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to share this PowerPoint with you guys. I am So grateful to Aparo for the opportunity to be here and talk to you about this. I am nerdily passionate about the Google Ad Grant. I tend to be nerdily passionate about all things Google, actually. I'm going to tell my age a little bit, but I remember sitting in my college computer lab for the first time when a Gmail beta invitation came across my desk, and I got so excited. Wow, this is my favorite search engine. If they're going to start doing emails too, oh, this is going to be so exciting. So I've just always loved Google and been really deep into their ecosystem. And about 8 years ago, started managing the Google Ad Grant for a nonprofit that I was volunteering for at the time, and probably have been doing Google AdWords in some capacity for employers and places I worked and clients for about 10 years. I've been certified for about 6 years. Google does have a Google Partner Certification Program, and if you've heard that phrase, what that means is that you've passed some product exams, some certification exams to prove that you have a certain level of product knowledge, but there's also a time and experience and ad spend threshold that you have to achieve to be considered a Google partner. So I've been doing that for about 6 years. And my passion has always been nonprofits, so it's only natural that I've started to specialize a little bit more and more in doing the Google Ad Grant for nonprofits. So I'm grateful to Jennifer for setting this up so we can talk about this today. I'm nerdily passionate that every nonprofit knows about the Google Ad Grant. A lot of people just don't even know about it. And another common thing I hear from nonprofits is, well, I've heard about it, we tried it, it didn't work. Lame, you know, couldn't figure it out. And I guess I'm here to kind of work through some of that with you. It is a complicated ecosystem. So I do recommend that you hire someone with experience to manage it for you, or you have a skilled volunteer or a skilled team member who's willing to kind of be patient, roll up their sleeves and learn that system, because it does take some really specific knowledge and skill sets to make the most out of it. But it is incredibly powerful to help your nonprofit achieve your mission. And in my opinion, it's become more and more of an opportunity, you know, especially during the pandemic, as nonprofits are trying to get the word out about their mission in the digital world. The Google Ad Grant has become more important than ever. So for a nonprofit that has any money allocated towards digital marketing, if you're not taking advantage of the Google Ad Grant, this might be an opportunity for you to get a big return on a very small investment. And what I mean by that is the Google Ad Grant, for anyone who's not familiar with it, is a program offered by Google that gives you $10,000 a month of in-kind advertising dollars. And so what that means is when you go to a search engine and you search for where to volunteer in Charlotte, North Carolina, there might be a few ads that pop up above the organic search results. And so that ad space is what you're buying. We actually manage ads for lots of for-profit companies as well. So for example, a dentist would not only have to pay an ad agency a few $100s a month to manage their ad campaign, but they would have to pay Google on a per click basis for that ad space. It's a complex bidding system where you're bidding against the competitors for individual keywords like dentist near me or dentist in Charlotte and things like that. And so most of our really small local business clients will have something like a budget of $1,000 a month that they're willing to spend on advertising. But Google is coming out and saying, any 501c3, we want to help you. We want to just give you $10,000 a month to spend on this ecosystem. You just have to learn how to do it. And we're going to talk about some creative strategies and ways that you can use that money, creative ideas for campaigns that you can set up, what you need to be successful, and all that kind of good stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the particulars and about some of the jargon and words you might hear in this world, but for the most part, we're going to try and stay really high level, as Jennifer said, a mile wide and an inch deep, and just get you thinking creatively about how you can think outside the box to use it. Because
Laura, may I ask a question about something that you said?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
You were mentioning that this is the kind of thing that you want to have a skilled volunteer or a paid engagement or whatnot, somebody that's willing to roll up their sleeves and kind of dig in and keep up with it. So I have two questions. Again, at a high level, as people start to frame their thinking. Okay, the first thing that comes to mind is, how many hours at a high level would you guesstimate I should allow? Is the first question. And the second question is, are there broad strokes in terms of the kind of expense I might incur if I have to hire someone for that? So if you'll tuck those into your memory or answer them now or whatever, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that right now. Some pretty quick answers.
Thank you.
We really look at managing the Google Ad Grant for clients a couple of times a month. There is a requirement to actively manage the account in order to keep the grant. So in other words, you have to log in, you have to make adjustments, you have to make improvements. And the web app is actually really great at suggesting some improvements for you and things like that. So they make it as easy as they can, but you do really need to be managing it on at least once every 2 weeks, have some time dedicated to log in, make some changes. There's a compliance dashboard. There might be a keyword you need to delete, some things like that. So I would say 3 to 5 hours a month, just actively managing it. And if you're new to the ecosystem, you might want to spend a little time, maybe it's a couple of days you have set aside to sort of go deep on an online boot camp or a lynda.com training course or something, just all about the Google Ads ecosystem. And a couple hours a month of just learning as well for somebody who's new at it. And for an agency to work on this, we're in the neighborhood of $300 to $500 a month, depending on if you're a local nonprofit or a nonprofit with a national reach. And we'll talk about what that means, and we'll talk about even some hybrid approaches. But we're talking $300 to $500 a month. And another thing that's really helpful is if your organization already has a commitment to, or can at the same time make a commitment to, content marketing. Because at the end of the day, we're going to be promoting individual pages on your website. And so the more pages you have with unique content, the more fishing lines we'll be able to have in the water, so to speak. So that's really helpful as well, just from a resource and capacity standpoint. Certainly, we do manage the ad grant for organizations that do not have content marketing at all, and we only direct ads to their existing come volunteer with us pages and things like that. But it's extremely helpful if those other things exist as well.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
And when you are looking to make an investment, maybe hire an agency to help or hire a new team member to help or something like that, I think it's extremely helpful. We've had some organizations have a lot of success with pitching this to their board or pitching it to big donors who maybe want to underwrite that expense. Because if you can say, we'd like to hire this agency for $500 a month to manage our Google Ad Grant, if you're willing to underwrite that as one of our top donors, we can immediately parlay that donation into a 10x value of $10,000 worth of advertising benefit. So that's a pretty compelling ask for a donor to say, we can immediately have the opportunity to 10x your investment in our mission. So we'll talk about what that looks like in a little bit. But please chat in with any questions. I know we're talking about some really esoteric and technical information, and I don't want to go over anybody's head. So please don't hesitate to chat in, and Jennifer will read those questions out loud. So what does that mean? What could your organization do with these ads? There is a case study on Google's website for an organization called Science Buddies. They were one of the original adopters of the Google Ad Grant. In the time they've been using it, I think it's about 10 years, I'm not 100% sure, they've gotten 18.2 million clicks to their website. We volunteered with an organization starting out that called Island Dolphin Care that does special needs therapy for kids in Key Largo, Florida. And did I say that right? Dolphin therapy for special needs kids. And that's something that's so inspiring and wonderful. And yet that is definitely not a phrase that you would think to Google, dolphin therapy. Nobody knows maybe that exists. And so we got really creative for them and came up with, you know, a landing page all about dolphin facts. So people could come to the site and read about that, and then maybe see the mission of the organization, and then maybe tell a friend if they had a friend in their neighborhood who might want to try that. So there can be some really powerful indirect ways that you can use those clicks to bring people into awareness about your organization and about your mission, especially if you have some areas of service that people might not know to Google, or they might not know that it exists yet. So that can be really powerful. There's a lot of ways you can use those clicks to bring people in to learn more about you. And Science Buddies is an organization that works with students and teachers and encourages science education. So they have registered in their best year using the Ag Grant, they registered 100,000 students, and they've had 1,500 teachers download resources. One thing you can do with the Ag Grant is embed tracking code on a thank you page. So we can track how many people come onto your website because of the Ag Grant and then complete a certain goal action that you set up for them, like a teacher downloading free resources or a student registering for a program. So we can measure our success. We can measure how many people join your email newsletter list as a result of the Ag Grant and things like that. So we'll be able to report back on what this investment has done for your organization. And I'll share with the example of the Island Dolphin Care nonprofit. When we first started managing their Ag Grant, with the $10,000, they were able to get about 9,900 clicks to their website per month with those funds. And that's averaging just over $1 per click. We can talk a little bit more about that. Depending on your niche and how competitive it is, your clicks might cost more than $1, but that's just what they were able to achieve.
Laura, question. So could they, then I assume you can measure conversion too after those clicks, like whatever it was they were trying to convert the people to, right?
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. That's awesome. That's powerful stuff there.
It's very, very powerful. And I actually, kind of while we're on that topic, I want to skip ahead to this slide right here, because it just feels right to talk about while we're talking about this. One thing you really need for the Google Ag Grant is a strong website foundation. And that's just for, if you really think about it, just for a very practical purpose. I mean, this ad is on the internet. It's on the Google search engine page. It's going to direct people to your website, right? So your website needs to be a strong foundation that that performs well on the Google search engine. We can talk a little bit about that. But your website is really like your business card in the digital world. When, you know, a lot of nonprofits come to us and say, oh, we need to redesign our website. If you have a limited marketing budget, redesigning your website may not be the best way to spend your money. You know, if your website is able to get information out into the world and you spend your whole marketing budget redesigning the website, that's like designing a beautiful marketing catalog and printing 1,000 copies and then not having enough marketing budget left over to mail that catalog to your constituents. Or it's like printing business cards and not having anyone to hand them to. So the website is a powerful home base, but we need to think about ways that we're bringing people to that home base. And the Google Ag Grant can just help you put a lot of fishing lines in the water for that. But another thing I like to talk about here is, you know, as nonprofits, we're very excited. The number one action that we want from people a lot of times on our website, and we track it, we run the analytics, we improve the pages. We really want people to make a donation. That's the #1 action most of our clients want to drive people towards. We put big flashy donate buttons in the corner of the website, and that's awesome. And we should absolutely keep doing that. But when you think about the Google Ad Grant, I like to use the example of when you meet someone at a networking event, hopefully you don't hand them your business card and say, "My name's Laura, great to meet you. By the way, can I have your credit card number? I would love a donation." You're just not in a social setting, you're hopefully not going to do that. And so I think the metaphor applies to your website. You know, when we bring people into your website through the Google Ad Grant, how are we showing them the value of what you do? How are we showing them your impact? How are we meeting their needs? How are we getting them information that they're looking for? How are we doing all those things? And then encouraging them to, maybe it's join the email newsletter to keep in touch. Maybe it's download a free ebook. Maybe it's watch a video for caregiver education. Maybe it's learn something about the problem that your mission addresses. And then we can gradually bring them in along your spectrum to maybe first learn, maybe then they get involved and volunteer, then maybe they start donating, and then maybe they can be empowered as a powerful advocate, center of influence who's helping other people get engaged with your nonprofit. So I like to keep that in mind as we're not only designing campaigns to address each of those opportunities along the spectrum, but also just making sure that our expectations are reasonable for someone who comes to your website for the first time. What do we really want that person to see and do and know on their very first visit to your website? So I just wanted to stop and mention that. So this is an important screenshot for anyone who's still having trouble kind of visualizing what I'm talking about when we talk about Google Ads or search engines or search ads. The Google Ad Grant specifically buys you what we call text-based search ads on the Google search engine. So what that means is when someone searches a phrase, we have the opportunity to tell Google we'd like our ad to show up when they search that phrase. We'd like this particular ad to show up. And that's the ad text is what you see here, find where to volunteer in Charlotte. We know that this is an ad because it connotates here just to the left of the URL that it's an ad. And Google is actually very, very smart. You know, since a lot of advertisers, in fact, all of them except for nonprofits, pay money for their ad space, it is a big part of Google's revenue model. It's a big part of how they grew to be such a big, powerful organization, is their ad system is very profitable. One of the ways that they stay profitable is that they understand user behavior. They understand that if they had 3 ads at the top of search results every single time you searched a phrase, they know that human behavior is such that we would start to recognize those as ads and we would start to ignore them and skip down to the organic search results. Instead, what they do is highly vary the search results. So sometimes when you search a phrase, you might not see any ads. Sometimes when you search a phrase, you might see 1 ad. Sometimes you might see 2, sometimes 3, sometimes they're above the content, sometimes they're below the top 10 search results. So they keep that highly variable so that users cannot train themselves to ignore the ads. In fact, you will often hear a lot of people say, you know, if a company quizzes you and says, did you find out about us on Google? Was it organic or a paid ad? A lot of people don't know the difference. So our job is definitely to know the difference. And, you know, a lot of organizations invest thousands of dollars. Some of them even have big monthly budgets for investing in improving their organic SEO or the rate at which they appear higher in the organic search rankings without paid ads. And that can be, I like to say SEO is a marathon and not a sprint. It can be a big effort to get a return on very few keywords. And the Google Ad Grant can pretty much get you to the top above the rest of the results for your keywords. And I say that very slowly and carefully. I do want to stop and point out one thing also in the world of Google, especially when you're talking about search results and SEO, there's a very powerful algorithm that's driving these search results. So anytime anyone talks about Google, I know it sounds a little bit like they're selling snake oil, right? Because it's such a big mystery. This algorithm is literally written by rocket scientists that Google hired away from NASA. It is complicated. It's also top secret. Google does have a webmaster blog where they'll occasionally give you some advice, but they're also very good at learning over time what spammers are doing to trick the rankings and then rewriting the algorithm to prevent that. They'll do things like have contests for people to rank for a certain made up keyword, and then they'll use all the tricks they use to trick the algorithm. They'll reverse engineer that and start preventing those spammers. It's very smart. So there's no way in the Google ecosystem for anyone to ever guarantee you results, because all you can do is participate in the system, follow the rules. If you break the rules, I feel confident that they will eventually catch up to you and punish your site and the algorithm for that. So I don't recommend that. You can very much follow the rules and set yourself up for success. But at the end of the day, the algorithm is going to determine when your ad shows, how often it shows, and those kinds of things. So those are a lot of the settings that we manage behind the scenes for clients. And we'll talk about some of the nitty gritty towards the end. But at its core, it's very simple. It's like the yellow pages used to be. When I'm looking in the yellow pages for a plumber, it's because my toilet is leaking. You know, it's because I have a need. It's because I have a very specific something that I'm looking for. And Google as a search engine is the best, and that's why they stay so top of mind. They're the best at driving relevant search results for that end user. And the same thing really applies to their ads. They're not going to show your ad if their algorithm determines that it's not relevant to that user's search phrase. So even if we decide to show an ad for Volunteer Charlotte, North Carolina for your nonprofit, we need a corresponding page on your website that says, you know, hey, come volunteer with us. We're located in Charlotte, so that Google understands that your content is relevant to that keyword as well. So, so there's no guarantees, but there are absolutely best practices that we've seen lead to a lot of success for organizations. So this is an example of a keyword that a local nonprofit might use. This data we have here is a bit of a case study. We just used for one of our clients that we managed the ad grant for, who's local in Charlotte, North Carolina. In the last 12 months, when I put this report together, they were able to get almost 7,000 clicks to their website in the last 12 months for their volunteer campaign. So that's absolutely something that you guys can do if volunteering is important to you and important to your mission. A few other things we can do for local nonprofits might be, you know, where to donate coats. We've done things like that, where to donate furniture. If you take those type of donations, a lot of people are Googling that locally. And we also have the ability to restrict geography. So what we can do is say, we only want this ad to show for people who are either in Charlotte or searching for information about Charlotte. So that, again, you're not, so that you're only showing your ads to relevant users. And we'll talk about times when you might want to target a national audience here on the next couple of slides. So this is the dolphin facts example I gave. The one client who's located in Key Largo, Florida, but people fly to them from all over the country because it's such a niche thing. So we have a nationally targeted campaign for them all about dolphin facts. And this just brings people onto their website and into their funnel in a fun, creative way and gets people engaged in their mission. There are lots of examples of nonprofits who have a national information-based mission where your mission might be to update people on the latest and greatest health news related to your cause and things like that, so that when someone is searching for that information, you can be the first one that comes up and you can be their go-to resource and start to build your relationship and build your credibility that way. So, you know, we got almost 10,000 clicks to their website, again, averaging just over $1 a click in that campaign. And I want to talk also about a hybrid of local and national. And I feel like a lot of nonprofits fit into this category. So we've worked in the past with an organization that in Charlotte who serves only the local Charlotte community with their local services. They provide hands-on support for people with a certain illness, and that's great, but only people who are local can have that. So we have a locally targeted campaign about those services, but then they also have a video series that caregivers with anywhere in the country for caregivers of people with this specific illness. So we have a separate campaign that's targeted nationally to just anyone searching for information about how to be a caregiver for this type of situation. So that's an area where, you know, I know we talk about using the Google Ad Grant to bring people into your funnel to maybe make a donation or support your organization. But the Google Ad Grant can also be really powerful for helping you deliver your mission, because it's core and central to their mission to get this information out to caregivers. They're very passionate about it. It's the reason, one of the main reasons the nonprofit was founded. And they can actually, you know, if you're budgeting for this expense might not be filed under marketing for your organization. It might be filed under mission delivery. It might be a part of what you do, or it might be a hybrid. It might be part mission delivery and part fundraising or marketing expense. So I think that's really important to understand the difference, and also to understand that you can serve ad campaigns to different geographies based on where that information is relevant. We also had a nonprofit in a similar position with local and national campaigns also add a state campaign to the mix, because they wanted to get out some information about the state of North Carolina's unemployment laws related to the pandemic. And so they had a whole blog post about that, and we promoted that to just North Carolina. So wherever your information is relevant, we can target that area and share that information. And I mentioned starting with a strong foundation of your website. Charity Water is always a great example. I love their website, and their digital marketing is always great to refer to for best practices. They make it so easy to give a recurring monthly donation right there on their homepage, usually, or maybe this is their donate page that I've taken a screenshot of. They make it really simple. And a couple of best practices that I'll just highlight that will help you with your Google Ad Grant is keeping in mind this donation form right here. Notice how simple it feels. Notice how few boxes there are to fill out. There's marketing data that suggests that for every question you ask someone, every additional question or box you ask them to fill out on a form is going to decrease the likelihood that they complete that form. So the more simple you can keep your sign-up forms, you know, do you really need their first name and their last name and their phone number and their email address just to get them to join your email list? Or is just first name and email address enough? So those types of things can really help you maximize the impact that your Google Ad Grant's going to have, because you're going to be driving more user actions on your website. So we like to pay attention to those kinds of things. Some other things on your website that will really help. First of all, your website needs to be mobile friendly. In this day and age, Google search rankings are actually starting to use what they call mobile first rankings. So they're not even looking at your desktop site in some cases anymore to determine your ranking. They're only looking at your mobile site. And if it doesn't perform well, or if it's not mobile friendly, they won't add you to their organic rankings or their advertising system. So you do need to make sure your website's mobile friendly, and a very fast, speedy website is also very important. Google has 2 free tools for that. You can easily Google it. There's a Google page speed test and there's a Google mobile friendly test. So you can take a look at that. I like to see scores in the A's and B's. Once you start talking C or lower, we need to improve the speed of your website to make sure that's not impeding the delivery of your ads across the Google ad system. And a lot of this, even if we were to make those improvements for a nonprofit that's running the Google Ad Grant, those same improvements are also going to help with their organic SEO ranking. So a lot of these things that we're improving would have a kind of a trickle down effect, for lack of a better word, to also improve some of your other marketing efforts. The website does need to be a strong foundation, because that's quite literally, you know, the ads are directing people to the website. So the website is really the crux of kind of the information that you're getting out there. And it's worth mentioning also, if your nonprofit happens to have multiple websites, multiple subdomains, and those kinds of things, the Google Ad Grant is limited to 1 URL. So if you have multiple URLs, really think through which one you're using as your main home base URL and direct all your ads there. And then once people are on your website, then we can think about meaningful ways to get them to your other websites. That's not very common, but it's come up a few times. And there are a few other, oh, sorry, go on.
I'm sorry. I wanted to ask you a question about what you just said, because it resonates with a message that we've sort of been hearing over the last couple of years or so, and it may have been around longer than that. But anyway, and so I want to check and make sure that it marries up with what you're saying. What I hear you saying is that your website is the it for your message, and everything else comes under that. Your social media, your extra, if you have additional websites or whatever. But what I'm trying to get at is, bottom line, I think what you're saying is, pick a place that's going to be the quote unquote Bible of your message, like the place where your message lives, where you spend the most amount of time, where you pay the most attention to trying to communicate, and then everything else becomes a subset of that, and you let your data drive whether you even pay attention to Instagram or whatever. I just made that up. Am I saying that accurately?
Yes, absolutely. And that's something that I recommend to every organization, whether they're a nonprofit or not. We have a lot of clients that adamantly track their Google Analytics, and they track page views as a major goal of how many people viewed a page on our website, how many browsing sessions did we have, what's the average amount of time people spend on our website. They track those metrics furiously, and yet will send a constant contact email to every prospect they've ever met and put all of the content in the email instead of saying, click here to learn more on our website. And in my opinion, that's a missed opportunity, because you can direct people to your website for that information, and while they're there, they might browse and learn something else, or they might browse and make a donation. They might browse and sign up to volunteer for a project. So my recommendation is always to continue linking people to your website. The same thing goes for social media. The more often you link to your website, that will also improve your website's reputation score, which can improve some of your organic rankings for those related keywords. So all of those are signals that Google receives to contribute to your website's overall reputation score. That's going to help how you improve in the search engine. And it's also just good, practical human process. It's not going to overwhelm people. They're going to know one place. If all else fails, let's just make sure the latest information is on the website, because that's our home base. You know, so if you're always directing people back to that home base, you'll be really well set up for success.
Yeah, I mean, I think another key reason that's an important message is as resource strapped organizations, generally nonprofits fall in that category, you're in a position where you have to prioritize. Where are you going to spend your time and money? And so when you're really trying to figure out, okay, what basket am I going to put my eggs in? I think this information you're giving us is instructional and helps people figure out, what should I strike off of my priority list right now? If I can only do 3 things, what are the other things that are going to drop off the list? So anyway, that's really what I was getting at, and I appreciate that explanation. And then we had a question come in from chat. Somebody was asking, would you please repeat what you were saying about that page speed again?
Page speed?
I think you must have meant the
Yeah.
load speed is what I'm thinking you meant.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, page load, just your overall website load time is so important. And when your site loads in each person's internet browser, there's a couple of things that are happening. Well, first of all that code is coming from somewhere. You've embedded a Google font that's hosted on a Google server. You've got a picture that you uploaded to your WordPress website, and there's colors and style sheets. There's all kinds of stuff that's trying to download in that browser all at the same time. And some of it's at a website level. Your whole website, every page pulls the same font and things like that. And some of it's at a page level. This picture is only on this page, so it only loads when you're on that page. So we want to make sure the overall website, as well as each individual page, is loading very quickly, just because Google knows that users will get really frustrated and leave a website after a second. We're pretty impatient. I mean, how long do you really sit and wait for a page to load before you get impatient and click away? I think we all are guilty of that, and so can relate to that statistic. So Google, if you just Google search the phrase Google page speed test, there is a free tool for that. And if your site needs a certain improvement, they're pretty good about, in the little pop-up box, telling you how to improve that particular metric. I will say one thing we recommend to our clients is that everyone get on the free Cloudflare CDN plan, Content Delivery Network, which is just a way of saving your website's most important commonly downloaded assets sort of in the cloud to be delivered more quickly. And it keeps your site from pulling all the same resources from the same server, because now if that server is slow, your website's going to be slow. So having a web hosting company that has you on a fast server can also be really important. So there's a lot that goes into site speed, but just in general, you want to use that Google page speed tester to test all of your important landing pages on your website. If you have hundreds of pages on your website and you don't have time to test them all, just test a few of your most important landing pages that are bringing people into your funnel. Your homepage, your donate page, your volunteer page, your where to get help page, things like that, and make sure that those are performing really well for you. Okay. When we talk about your website as a home base, most organizations' homepages are their most visited web page. And I just wanted to share what I thought was a really nice example. It looks really ugly because I've just tried to screenshot a specific piece of a web page here to show you the concept. This is, I believe, from the Seattle Aviation Museum. They did a really great job of tailoring their website content exactly to their different audiences. So because they understood that very specific audiences are going to want very specific things from them. For example, if you're a military veteran, you're probably coming to the Seattle Aviation Museum because you want to see a cool airplane that you used to fly when you were in the Air Force 30 years ago, right? So click here and we'll show you all of our cool military airplanes. If you're a teacher, you probably want to plan a field trip, or you're looking for educational resources. So click here if you're a teacher, and we're going to take you to a landing page that's all for teachers. So I would really encourage all organizations to think through their website content in this way and make sure that people are able to find the content that they need. So what I like to recommend is brainstorm a list of everyone that your organization touches, really. I mean, if it's community members, board members, is it people who are members of the press and the media looking for content? Is it volunteers? Is it people with a certain disease? You know, who are the people that you're serving? Who are the people that are coming to your website looking for information? How can you make it as easy as possible for them to know where they need to go? And then also get two things: the information that they want, and also the information that you want them to have that they may not know that they need yet, right? So I just thought this was a really great example that put that methodology really front and center on their homepage. And this methodology also works really well for the Google Ad Grant. So one best practice for the Google Ad Grant, if you're overwhelmed and you don't know where to start, a great best practice is to use your ad campaigns in the Google Ad Grant to mirror your website structure. So if I was designing a Google Ad Grant for this website, I would say, let's have a whole ad campaign for military veterans. If there's a specific B-52 bomber airplane that we have at this museum, I'm going to maybe have a whole ad campaign of keywords of that exact plane name. So anyone looking for information about that plane will come to this military veterans landing page. And I might have a whole ad campaign or ad group for teachers, for anyone Googling best places to take field trip in Seattle for 5th graders, you know, those types of keywords. I might have an ad that comes up that takes them directly to this educator landing page instead of now taking them to the home page. So we can mirror that. We can mirror those different ads and those different campaigns to your website structure, which works especially well if your website is really well organized like this, but it can work for anyone. You know, most websites are already pretty well organized into about us, our services, volunteer or get involved, and donate, and things like that. And so if all else fails, those can be your campaigns until you get more creative and start adding new campaigns along the way. And I'll contradict myself also, even though I said it's not polite to, you know, meet someone and say, hi, I would like your credit card number. It also doesn't hurt to just have that ad campaign out there also, because especially depending on your nonprofit type, you never know who might really just be genuinely searching. I had a loved one pass away from this thing, and I just really want to find any nonprofit that helps in that area so that I can make a donation. And while I'm feeling that emotion, I really want to just find it and make a donation now. So that can still happen. We do want to build out a campaign for that, but we don't want to let our whole strategy rest on that, that particular scenario. And we did talk about this, you know, the spectrum that we move people along with your organization. We do want to be thoughtful about that as we design campaigns for people who want to learn, volunteer, donate, and eventually be empowered advocates for your cause. So we're starting to get into some of the nitty gritty, but we're also starting to run out of time. I think we have about 10 minutes, right, Jennifer?
Yeah, we do. And we probably want to allow just a few minutes, not many, but a few minutes for questions, comments, or whatnot before we adjourn at the end.
Sure. And I'll be happy to make these slides available to everyone through Aparo. Some of these nitty gritty slides are really things that you can read and I can talk about for a few minutes if no one has questions. But I do want to pause and just see if anyone has questions, or if you have a specific nonprofit mission that you want to throw out, and see what creative ideas we can kind of brainstorm or anything like that in the chat. I'll let you guys think about that for a minute while I talk about some super basic terminology. Jennifer, interrupt me if there is a question. question.
So somebody wants you to go back to your contact page. Lisa will go back to it in just a second. And also, so that Laura can get to this terminology, and also know that when we follow up after this webinar, we'll also give you all that info. So have no fear. We'll put it back up there.
Yes, and I did put my email address in the chat already as well, I think.
I believe you did at the top when we first came in. Yep, sure did. So we can scroll to the top of the chat.
Great, and y'all feel free to email me if you think of a question after we click away. I'd be happy to respond. And any other questions, Jennifer?
Let's see, we've got, how do you stay organized managing nonprofit marketing efforts?
Oh, that's a very big question.
Yeah.
I will say
like, what tips would you give? I think, so yeah, Avery came back and said, what tips would you give for kind of handling, you know, marketing and communication? So your outbound comms.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's so overwhelming. And I'm at the point now where I have a couple of clients that kind of defer to us as sort of an ex officio chief marketing officer. So that's actually something I'm working on right now. And actually Asana has been probably the handiest tool that I have used for team collaboration and just managing those marketing goals. You know, you can go in and create a recurring task for, you know, your quarterly checklists. So I would say process, get everything in process, you know, put it in someone's job description, have just a monthly, have just a, you know, a recurring task in Asana for once a month to check on your Google Ad Grant, you know, campaigns, and things like that. I mean, really just building it out in process is the only way that all of this stuff can get done. And I think I've also had some organizations be successful in saying, okay, February is email month. I'm going to really focus on a little extra on what I can do to improve my email templates and my email process and that. And then, you know, really focus on improving your process and improving your baseline during that month of focus, and then move on. And maybe the next month is social media month. And that's when you want to stop and take a look at all of your cover images and make sure they're not so antiquated and things like that. And that also depends on your organizational capacity, right? You could change out your Facebook cover image once a month if you have the capacity, or it might be something where you're a really small staff and you just really need to check once a year. You'd be happy to check once a year and just make sure it's current, you know? So a lot of it depends on your capacity, but I think managing it in process with some sort of checklist or app like Asana is really important.
You know, so if that's starting to curl your hair as you listen to Laura say process, and you're like, process, how do I have time to do that? You know, that's kind of a role that Paro can play for you. One of the things that we help a lot of organizations do is figure out business processes. How do I get from point A to point B? So if that's something that you need some assistance with, by all means, reach out to us. The second thing she mentioned is Asana. And you might be saying, it's a piece of software for project management. Don't know how to use it? Call a Paro. Need a trainer? Call a Paro. That's the kind of thing that we go out and source and try to help bring to the table so you can get at the resources, the processes, the tools that you need to execute on to get to your end goal. So that's kind of, if you're not familiar with a lot of the stuff Paro does, that's a little bit of it. So in support of the recommendations that Laura is making, there are resources and help out there for you to get there. We won't just cut you loose in the breeze and say, hey, go figure it out. We can help you.
Yeah, and in a perfect world, I think process doesn't have to be a dirty word. Hopefully for every minute you spend detailing a process, hopefully it's going to save you thousands of minutes in the future, right? So we're big on process as well when we design websites. So how can we when we're building your website, how can we make sure the contact form on your website automatically sends people to your Salesforce app? If you have a volunteer form on your website, it can automatically send people to your constant contact mailing list called volunteers. You know, how can we build in some of that automation through process as well to save you time? And especially when we're talking about technology, which I know that's the world we live in and Apara lives in, there's a lot of ways to automate. And especially even with Asana, there's ways to automate. You know, if I mark a certain task is done, it can automatically email a different team member to say, okay, now it's time for you to do your part of that task, and things like that that save you time and help you collaborate. So really, I would encourage you to just think about, getting more efficient, because we all need more time in the day.
You know what strikes me? You heard the old saying, you have to spend money to make money. So that applies to time efficiencies too. Sometimes you have to spend time to save time. You've got to be willing to play the long game and look way ahead, right? That's how you really start building in long-term efficiencies and data efficiencies. Another question that we had come up, Laura, and that is, any suggestions on finding donors to match, quote unquote, the Google Ad Grant?
Sure. I mean, it is a pretty big investment. So my knee-jerk reaction is that we're probably talking about someone who is already acquainted with your organization, who's already a supporter, and maybe just needs a push to get over the edge into recurring monthly support. So I would encourage you to look at your pool of donors who have been involved for a long time, but have not gotten to the point where they're making a recurring monthly donation. And maybe that's a really good place to start. And if you start there and you're not successful, then maybe you can look at the people who are already making a recurring monthly donation and ask if they would like to increase it to that, that certain amount to be able to afford the Google Ad Grant. And it is a pretty compelling case study. And I would say, depending on your mission, there's also grants out there. The AstraZeneca Pharmaceutical Foundation right now, and they're largely responsible for a lot of this Breast Cancer Awareness Month craziness that we've seen, because that was their big focus area over the last decade. They've now shifted focus, and they're focusing on grants for nonprofits that do programming to get kids active. So if your nonprofit is Girls on the Run, or tennis for youth, or anything that's active where kids are just like active, they're providing grant funding for programs like that. So you could also look for specific grants that fund whatever your type of program is, and possibly use those kind of grants as well.
Perfect. And in the final moment, we have about 60 seconds left, and maybe we can touch on this for maybe 30 of those 60 seconds. How difficult is it, generally speaking, to get the grant approved, and what are common reasons for being declined? And if that's something we can't answer rapidly, then we'll direct people back to you separately.
No, I can so rapidly. And I also want to say to that last question about, how to find those donors, if you're uncomfortable with a one-on-one ask, it could even be a mass email blast to that pool of donors I mentioned that just really eloquently describes the opportunity and how passionate you are about it, and then says, we're looking for someone, let us know if you know of anyone, or a grant. So that's one thing I wanted to say specifically. The approval process, yes, it's shocking to me how easy it is to get this grant. Basically, it's not even really an apply to get approved in the sense of it's a contest. Google will give this grant to any 501c3 across the board, period, the end of sentence, a couple of exclusions being very large universities and very large hospitals and things like that. I guess they figure those giant organizations have giant budgets to go along with it. They're excluded from the program. However, really any 501c3. And the application process is really simple. You apply through the Google for Nonprofits umbrella program first. Simple application. They just ask for your 501c3 number, a little bit about your mission. Once you're approved for that, it takes a couple of weeks probably to come back. I think 3 days to 2 weeks. Then you apply specifically for the Google Ad Grant program. You take a quick survey, again, 15 minutes. I just did it on a conference call with a client this week. A few survey questions and you're off to the races. And then it takes them, again, 3 days to 2 weeks to come back with your approval. After that, you're approved for the grant, but you're not able to run ads until you set up the ads and then submit them for approval. So it's a 3-tier application process. The first 2 are really just fill out a short form and wait. The last phase is you have to have everything built out and then they approve it and then your ads start running.
Perfect, perfect. And guys, if I realize that was kind of a quick answer and I'm rushing Laura a little bit, and that's because I want to honor your time and adjourn. I'm already 1 minute over the time. So what I'll leave it at is this. Number 1, thank you, Laura. Number 2, we're going to follow up with a copy of this deck as well as Mission Possible slide and Laura's contact details. By default, you'll have Aparo's contact details. With that, I thank everybody for your time and attention. I hope this was valuable. Please be sure and reach out if you have questions. Laura, thank you, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Yeah, and if anyone is interested in sort of a do-it-yourself e-course, drop me an email. You know, I know not everyone can afford agency fees for this, and that's something that's been in the back of my mind. And if there's enough interest, I can put together that e-course sooner than later. That's been something I've been thinking about. So feel free to send me an email if you're interested in that, if and when it exists.
Perfect. Well, listen, thank you again, Laura. Sure do appreciate your time. And guys, be looking for those follow-up resources by the end of the week. With that, we'll adjourn. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Take care. Bye.
Thanks.